We know there are many choices in internet radio, and the staff and host of LA Talk Live would like to thank you for choosing the internet's hottest destination for the most eclectic sound and invigorating talk. This is LA Talk Live. We are more than just talk.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Book Beat. I'm Jean-Noel Bassior, and we've got a great show planned for you today. We've got Stephanie Cobian, I hope I got that right, as a guest. She's going to be our guest expert. And we have authors Joan Moran and Karen Kondazian with us. So they'll be with us later on in the show. Could you become a guestbird, a sought-after media expert? In just a few minutes, we'll find out from Stephanie, who's going to join us. She is a talent executive and project manager for Jackie Jordan's publicity firm. And you're in the TV guestbird division? Is it like a division? Okay.
Yeah, it's under the umbrella of
under
Jackie
the umbrella.
Jordan.
Great, that's perfect. So, just because we keep up with news with what's happening in the publishing world, and how mainstream is falling apart day by day, came across a great blog post yesterday, actually sent to me by my brother, and who composed the bumper music for this show, Rick Fleischman. And this was trending on Twitter, which is why he spotted it. And it was a blog post at techcrunch.com by James Altucher, Altucher. He's got a new book out, self-published. In its first month out, it has sold 44,294 copies. Amazing. And it's a book on self-publishing and how if you do what he did, you can be successful too. Now, I don't think you could be that successful necessarily, and I should tell you right off the bat, he spent a lot of money to do this, but the difference between James spending money and a lot of people who spend money is that he got the best possible results. He got the best possible people to work with. And what he ended up doing, which is what I advise people in my coaching, is because it's probably a good choice for most people to self-publish these days, he got a self-published book of mainstream quality. And that's what I believe it's worth shooting for if you're going to self-publish. So how did he do it? Well, this is a book about self-publishing. And first he asked the basic question, why do we need traditional publishers anymore? And that's a really good question to ask. I come from mainstream, and I'm really late to the party with self-publishing, but now I understand what's really going on. The problem is quality. And there's a lot of self-published books with beautiful covers, and you open them up and they're absolutely unreadable. This happens a lot. Everybody in the studio is shaking their heads. So this book that James Altucher has written goes into, step by step what you can do to get a really good self-published book. And I love his reason that he did this. Because when you write a nonfiction book, if you're trying to get with a traditional publisher, you've got to do a book proposal. And James says, I hate getting the feeling of, I hope he or she chooses me for X. Because that's exactly what happens in the mainstream world when you try to get past the gatekeepers. And that is when you send your proposal in to a mainstream publishing house. And often, who are the gatekeepers? Who are the initial gatekeepers? It's the 21-year-old who just graduated from Sarah Lawrence College. And he makes this point that he says, like, a lot of these assistants and interns can't really recognize what your experience is. And I know from coaching people that you could be really great at what you do, but if you can't put it into lively mainstream language, you may not get past the gatekeepers. Because one thing about the kids who graduate and go to work as first readers at publishing houses is they know how to recognize good writing style. That much they know. but they may not recognize the depth of your experience. And so I've seen many good book proposals almost make it in this business. I've seen rejection letters from editors that say, gosh, I stayed up all night reading it, but it's just not right for us at this time. So that's why self-publishing is really the answer for a lot of people. And I just want to say quickly before we get to our first guest here that one of the nice things that James Altucher has done in this book is he says that we are in publishing 3.0. So he's defined the changes that have happened. 1.0 is what he calls traditional publishing. Then we went to 2.0, and that was when we got a lot of self-published books, but a lot of them were bad. Now we're in 3.0, and what makes the difference? Because now a lot of the expert editors, book designers, all the people, formatters that do the things that you need to have a good book, they're all working freelance now. A lot of them are. They've gone away from the big publishing houses, big corporations. And so you can actually, by being savvy and choosing carefully, you can actually assemble the best people to work on your book. Now, you have to write it. I believe it has to be a good book. But that said, you can kind of do for yourself what a really good traditional publisher used to do for you. The only difference is with a traditional publisher, of course, you don't pay. They pay you. And in the self-published world, yes, you are paying. But the success of this book, it's called Choose Yourself, Be Happy, Make Millions, Live the Dream by James Altucher. It's a great book, and I suggest checking it out. It'll give you the basics of how publishing has changed and help you decide which way is best for you, traditional or mainstream publishing or self or independent publishing. So our first guest, you deal with a lot of authors, right?
Yes, we do.
Stephanie Cobian, thank you for being here with us.
Thank you.
Okay, so, you know, what I love about your term guest bird that Jackie Jordan came up with, right?
Yes.
What is a guest bird? It sounds like a really good, tag for someone.
Well, it's just a play on words. I
Yeah.
mean, just literally the two words guest expert, because we work in the media. So
Right.
we are a media development company. So we have experts come to us and they want to be on the news, they want to be on talk shows, and they want to be the experts. So they are guest experts. So we created guestperts.
Yeah, that's a great term. It says it all.
We love it.
Yeah. And so everybody wants to be the sought after media expert, right?
Absolutely. Everybody really wants that spot. Everybody wants to be known as the expert. And of course, you have to have your, you want to get on and get the publicity for either your book, just speaking of authors, or their website or their products. And everybody wants the big hit of, national. They want the Today Show, or they want Fox News. They want all those big things. Nancy Grace, all the national hits, of
Can
course.
they
and
have
local.
it, or is this unrealistic? Or can
Oh,
they
no,
have it?
any expert can. It's all about building your platform. So, and getting in front of the right producers. At the Today Show, there's different producers there. If you're going for your book, you have to get to the book producers. You're not going to go to the other segment. They have cooking producer segments and all the different types. You're not going to go to the fashion producers.
Right. So you guys kind of know how to steer people. And...
Oh, absolutely. Well, they come to us and we help build their platform. So we help, build their press kits. We make their websites. We also publish books for them, and we help them with the publicity for that. So when we are sending them out there, we do on-camera training. So we make them get ready so that they can actually handle the interview, because that's a big spot. If you were to get national, and it can be 3 to 5 minutes, go really quickly. Every second are dollar signs. So
do you find that people who have never done this before have certain illusions? For example, like, when a host asks you to submit questions, some people actually think, like, I'm going to ask a question like, so why did your best friends like your book so much? Tell me.
We have different people, those green experts who know nothing about TV and they think they'll get paid. And we're like, oh, that's the big bubble breaker. Like, no, you're not paid. They don't pay for travel. They don't pay for your hotel. That's the biggest
misconception.
Exactly. But then, I mean, they're not too worried about what we kind of help them on their speaking points and the topics, and so we gear them so that they are kind of, they know how to play the dance with the host.
Really?
Yeah.
And how do you play that dance? What are some of the basic things you teach them?
Well, that's a great question. Let me see. Some of the things we teach them is how to get in a plug. You don't want to just be like, oh, my book, da 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 da. You want to make it more subtle. So, as the author of, they say their book, when I was interviewing all these people, so you're not obnoxious about whatever you're plugging.
You're not supposed to appear to be selling a book, even though
Exactly.
you're there to sell a book.
It's not an advertisement. It's not a commercial. You are on a show. You're there to discuss something. So, even if you're discussing something that's not about your book, you can plug in your book, but you don't want to say, yes, I wrote the book, da da da. You want to fill it in.
I've heard that there are actually some of the bigger shows where you actually are not supposed to mention the title of your book. You allow the host to do that. Have you run into that?
There are certain shows that will do that. We've not really run into that too often. We have run into certain shows saying don't mention, like they've done an ENG, a newscast outside of studio, and they say don't mention, we'll mention where the shots were. You don't do that. So there are some rules, but they aren't usually too much about don't mention your book. We've never really run into that too often.
So where do people start? Like if they've never had any media experience, what's the first thing that they need to know?
Let's see. The first thing is, okay, they don't pay. That would be the first thing. Don't come in too green. The second thing would be, really watch television. Know who your audience, what shows do you want to be on? What news stations? If you're in LA, is KTLA your audience? Or is KCAL 9? Who do you want to be on? ABC, their news programs. When it comes to national shows and talk shows, do you want to be on Katie's show, or do you want to be on the Steve Harvey show? And are you even able to? If you're a doctor, you want to be on The Doctors, Dr. Oz. If you have a great demo segment, you can maybe even do something like Rachel Ray. And also just be aware, being an author, you have to most likely, not always, but have enough books in stock that you can afford for everybody in the audience. That's one thing that sometimes authors are like, well, I can't really afford my books. Well, then the doctors are not going to take you because they expect you to have your book for everybody in the audience.
And are they more open now to self-published authors?
Depends what show. Local news programs don't usually have a problem with that. We have had some on the national level. They'll book you, but it has to be on a topic as opposed to your book. It will not be a segment about your book. The Today Show, they have turned down several of our experts because they are self-published. And it's nothing against them or anything. They're just, at this moment in time, they haven't broken into allowing. But they'll take you if you have a topic, a different topic, just they're not to speak about your book.
That's interesting. So because I know that line still exists, that demarcation.
Unfortunately.
Yeah. Well, and sometimes there's good reason for it, as I think we know.
As you said earlier,
quality.
There's some that are just, I've read several self-published, and I'm like, has somebody copy edited this? Has somebody read this? Does this make sense?
And a lot of times what's really scary is I've seen things come out of, say, CreateSpace that have between 12 and 20 errors on one page, and it has been edited.
And sometimes, CreateSpace, they're a really good, useful program if you're getting started, but at the same time, it's not like going through a publishing house.
Right.
There are its differences, and it is catching up, and you can have a really great self-published book, but unfortunately you have such a dilution because there are so many. You'll have also that bad handful.
Right. True. So but the shows are there is a demand for experts, right? And that's...
Absolutely. Every show. If you watch news, there are always experts. Right now in San Diego, they have their mayor is going through a whole sex scandal right now.
Right.
And so they are having legal experts on every other day. Actually every day, to talk about different aspects of it. So you can have a labor lawyer who we've actually sent down there and talking about, what do you do? We sent down a life coach, and he talked about what the person who was abused or harassed, what do they do? How do you handle that? And then it's topics on how do you tell your children about it? How do you inform? So there's all aspects, all different.
That story is very rich, isn't it, for experts? That can keep a lot of experts going for a long time as this plays out, I think.
Goes on
women's
and
issues,
on.
right? And so
you have right now the Trayvon Martin case, which is a national news, so you can do it on the local level. But you also have the Detroit bankruptcy. So
Right.
I mean, now you're on a whole another, I mean,
The news
finance
is very rich
topic
this week
now.
with, you guys must be busy.
We really are, but it's all good. So
Yeah.
but we are really busy. But that's how it is. There's scientists on TV. There's health experts. I mean, we've all seen health segments on
Right,
TV.
right. And one of the things that we say on this show, and also with the other show I do with Susan Levin, Talk Up Your Biz, is if you are an expert and you're kind of sitting at home and suddenly somebody comes on TV and you're going like, well, I know everything they know. So if they came to you, like, what's their first step? How do they become that expert that gets called on?
Well, that's actually a great question. So, we have to look at their different hooks. One thing we do tell them to do is stretch your content. So if you're let's just take an example. If you're a life coach, you can talk about a lot of things, and what you need to do as an expert, bring in your personal experience. So we have a celebrity life coach in Los Angeles. She's gorgeous, she's great. One of the things we've done is use a lot of her personal story. She's married to a television producer, and has a adopted daughter, so that makes her unique in her own right, and then also we use her personal story of organization. So that's one huge thing. Now, that's not all life coaches are going to help with organizing, but she can. That's how she is like to the T, everything is labeled. So she's able to bring in her own personal experiences and of course her life coach experience too. So we're able to twist and stretch her content.
I think I want to be her.
I don't know.
Got it going on.
It's a little much for me. She labels everything. To the drawers are labeled with her children's clothes, and I'm like, oh, it's a little much for me.
For people that don't have that much, so let's say you have a small business and you're an expert in, I don't know, a certain kind of widget that, and then suddenly there's a news story and, do you look for news pegs and do you take people that, it's a little bit of a stretch, but, it's a challenge, but they can become an expert and
Oh yeah, I mean, there's so many topics. You could never run out of topics and changing topics to gear towards the media. One thing we always do is relate it to celebrities. If you're a relationship coach, there's so many different, so you can choose your topics out of that. You have the Kanye West, Kim Kardashian, or their baby, or you can do Halle Berry's getting engaged. One of our relationship experts actually just did an article on what does Halle Berry's ring shape mean, and she actually went to a website and they did a whole thing. She went to a diamond website and said, let's talk about the different shapes. So that's using her own unique hook. Now, she wasn't talking about her relationship, her marriage. She was talking about the ring. That was the topic, but using the relationship of Halle Berry as her hook. So you're able to do more than just, rather than just talk about Halle Berry's wedding. It's more than that. So you're able to do a lot of little things. So if you're a small business, you can twist it to those things, and also to news hooks, like the Trayvon, those things. But you can also create your own fun things. You don't necessarily have to stick to mainstream news stories. You can create your own little things at the same time. If you're a health expert, you can create your own health segment. What's hot right now is being raw. You can make up your own raw segment. Or we have an expert who does coconut milk and all or nut milks, and she's so that's a whole unique thing. She wants to do something on how to make your own homemade
and who would
milks.
you pitch her to, for example?
Well, actually, we're trying to get her on the ABC Eyewitness News, because they'll do one segment every news. ABC Eyewitness News does a health segment every day. So you pitch her in different places like that, at least to get her started.
So there are a lot of opportunities.
There's so many opportunities.
Wow. And one other quick question I have for you is, because we talked about this on the show a while back, is agencies becoming publishers, which is really interesting. But are you guys kind of getting into that right
We
now?
are publishing. I think we have about 6 books. I believe it's 6, maybe 7. And that's why we got in, because some of our experts needed a product. And we said, okay, well, a book is when you think expert on television, you think they're an author. That's one of the biggest things. And a lot of TV, as we discussed, they want authors. And, they'll take self-publishers sometimes, depends on the show. And so we took them, and also because now they're getting the publicity and their book at the same time.
Yeah, it's an interesting
So that's what
trend.
we're doing for them.
Yeah, because you guys can now, because it's like, what are agents going to do? There's a lot of agents now that are not you, because you have a different kind of agency, but it's interesting what's happening with agencies starting to publish.
Oh, exactly. Well, one of the big things is that a lot of people who publish their books come to us when it's published, self-publishers and just published authors, both of them. They'll come to us and say, hey, our book just came out last week. We want to get on TV. When's the best time? We're like, 6 months ago.
Yeah, right.
You don't wait until your book is out to start your publicity. You start it 6 months in advance. And that's so when we start publishing their book and getting the material gathered, we start getting their television material ready, their topics, their hot topics, and their speaking points and everything in their bio and headshots, because we're not waiting for the book to come out to start submitting you out to television. We're starting early. If we want you on the Steve Harvey show, we need to get to them several months in advance. The Today Show, they book 2 months out, if not more. So You don't want to wait till your book is published. You need to start 6 months in advance. So that's the advantage of also going to having your publishers and your PR the same company.
Right. I'm sorry. Oh, yeah. You want to hold the book up?
I do have
my
Jackie's
producer
book,
is on the spot here.
which is Get on TV.
Yeah. And that's by Jackie Jordan,
And you can learn all the basics in here, pitching the producers, how to book yourself.
Great. And how can people contact you?
Oh, they can go to our website, which is tvguestpert.com, which is TVGUESTPERT.
Great. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you
That's
for
really
having
great
me.
information. And stay tuned for Joan Moran. Is it possible to age gracefully, pursue your passion, and discover spiritual balance, all while living with great joy? I love that question. Stay tuned. Don't go anywhere. We'll find out. This is the Book Beat.
Thank you for tuning into LA Talk Live and the Talk Live Broadcast Network, original reality radio, handcrafted for your listening and viewing pleasure. This is LA Talk Live, and we are more than just talk. Stay tuned.
Hi, this is Dr. Levi, your fitness doctor, making a personal house call, inviting you to join me Wednesday at 10 a.m. Pacific for my all-new show, The Dr. Levi Show. Join us as we discuss fitness, health, and well-being, including emotional and spiritual health. So don't forget to tune in to The Dr. Levi Show every Wednesday at 10 a.m. Pacific, exclusively on latalklive.com and the Talk Live Broadcast Network. You can also catch us on iTunes, Radio R&B, or watch us on Ustream.tv, or catch us on the Live 365 network, and now on Radio Flag and Stitcher Radio. Reality radio handcrafted for your listening pleasure. This is LA Talk Live, and we are more than just talk.
Hi, this is Elena, inviting you to join me every Wednesday at noon for Elena's Beauty Talk and more, exclusively on LA Talk Live. You can also catch us on iTunes, Radio, R&B, or watch us on Ustream.tv. Reality radio, handcrafted for your listening pleasure. This is LA Talk Live, and we are more than just talk.
Hi, and welcome back to the Book Beat. I'm Jean-Noel Bassior, and joining me in studio is Joan Moran, and she is the author of 60, Sex, and Tango, Confessions of a Beatnik Boomer. So that's an intriguing title. Why you broke it into 3 parts? Is it each part 60, Sex, and Tango?
Yes, I have. First of all, thank you for having me on.
You're
I appreciate
welcome.
it, Noel. 3 parts to the book, 60, and then sex. and the last part is tango.
Hmm.
So 3 sections.
And how do they fit together? Or
They fit together perfectly. I don't. This is not strictly a tango book. Whenever people pick it up, they think it's, oh, I'm going to talk about Argentine tango, which is one of my passions. But actually, tango is a metaphor for my life. I consider it that part of the book, which is much more spiritual, much more Zen, and then settling into authenticity and finding your passions. And also, one of my major themes in this is that retirement is not an option.
Hmm.
So it's basically, I mean, people call it Act 3, you know.
I think of retiring as kind of like you're going to put tires on a car, like retire it or something like that.
Someone said that to me once. I thought that was very clever. Yes. Well, we're not going to put new treads on. You know, we have our treads.
Right. So you don't have any plans to retire, right?
There's no such thing.
Yeah,
I mean, I always say, what do you want to retire from life?
Yeah, right. Exactly.
Yeah,
exactly.
no. We just we keep pursuing whatever it is that makes us happy and fulfilled. So the actual concept for this book started when I was in my 60s. Well, I still am in my 60s, but the early part of it, and I was surprised by, you know, each decade has its own kind of fulfillment, and you have expectations and objectives. And when I was in my early 60s, I thought, wow, what's this about? Things were changing very quickly. My children were adult children. They're married. I became a grandmother, and I was pursuing the things that I wanted to. I became a yoga teacher at 60 years old.
And you had a background in screenwriting, right? Acting,
Right.
Screenwriting?
I ran a theater for years. My own, it was a professional theater that I co-founded, and I also was a screenwriter for 15 years.
Yeah, you graduated from the American Film Institute.
Yes,
right?
I did, as a producing fellow, and then I fell in love with screenwriting.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And so then you became a yoga teacher, right?
Yes. I had always loved yoga, and I had practiced it for years, and I decided I'd take a yoga teacher training course, and I was the oldest person in class, of course, and the last one to learn to do a handstand. But I didn't know what I wanted to do. I was just taking the teacher training. I had no expectation of what was going to come out of it. And the last day of class, I decided I wanted to teach. And it was a surprise to me, and I was completely surprised by it.
Wow. So your life took a total new direction.
The last 10 years has taken a complete different direction, wrote a memoir, and became a keynote speaker. In the last several years, I morphed into someone who talks about great health and mind-body connection.
So you have a different view of getting older than most people have. And I notice with boomers, of course, it's sort of like, it's almost like there's two directions. I see some of us taking the direction our parents took. And it's like, oh, I've got to look like that because I'm 60, or, you know, and other people go like, no, that doesn't make any sense to me. I don't think I'll go that route. So
I was very fortunate. I had a mother who showed me the way.
Oh, wow.
So if you have a role model in front of you. My mother started teaching senior aerobics in her 70s.
Wow.
And did a DVD for the seniors. Mm-hmm. She's continued to build houses all the way through her 70s.
Wow.
And some years of the 80s. She went through her life seamlessly, following her passions. She sewed her own clothes until I think she could not, until she was 90. And by that time, she couldn't sew on black because she couldn't see it. But she was an incredible woman and a great role model. So I've been very fortunate to she always said, do what you want to do. Follow your passions, be authentic. Wow. So it was a very good experience for me.
That really helps. I had a grandmother who opened her business at the age of 65 and invented sportswear in this country and became Zolot of California, selling to Bloomingdale's and Lord and Taylor back east, Saks Fifth Avenue at 65, and into her 90s was working for private clients. So
I feel the same way. I feel that, and especially with speaking, which I feel puts all my skills together and bundles them up, and then allows me to connect with audiences and talk. And see, for me, age is not chronology. Age is an attitude, and an attitude influences judgment and your behavior. So if you don't feel that you're old, you won't be old. And but it's also a question of maintaining good health And of course, I'm passionate about yoga, so I feel that yoga and meditation is really important.
Too.
Yeah.
So in the book, is it about your journey, or are there tips in the book that will help people kind of do what you did or you're doing? Or?
It's about my journey, and it's a funny about my journey.
Mm-hmm.
I make fun of myself a lot. It's very self-deprecating because I love humor, and that's one of the things that gets me through life. Yes, I do have tips too. I mean, I have my chapter titles are pretty funny and pretty out there. And I talk about dating and internet dating.
So what about dating? Let's talk about that.
Because that's the sex part.
Right. So,
Yeah.
What do you think about intimacy, passion for people 60, 70?
A must.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that connecting to people, connecting to the opposite sex, if that's your preference, or same gender sex, it doesn't matter. But it's extremely creative, a creative part of your journey. So that if you find a nice partner and it works for you and you don't get in each other's way, and yet you still connect on your journey, that's great. That's really terrific. And of course, I have a chapter title in here which is very funny. It's called Men and Other Sociopaths I Have Met, and that's
you want to give us an example?
That's my internet dating journey.
What happened?
There are many examples in the book.
Give us your best one.
Oh, there's so many.
Scary? Scary? Or positive?
Peculiar.
Oh, okay, that's good.
The peculiar was a stockbroker meeting me at Starbucks, and at 7, and I thought it was for dinner, and then he told me he never ate a meal after 5 o'clock at night. And then the first thing he asked me was, "Did you lie on your profile?" And both of which were terrifying to me at the moment. And I said, I think I need to eat something. So he had to feed me, and then I had to answer the questions. But it was pretty funny at the end. Of course, we never saw each other again.
That was the only date, right? The first.
Oh yeah, it was the first and only one. I had some second and third dates. Mm-hmm. But nothing that stuck too much.
Did you meet anybody fabulous, or is it?
At the time, was fabulous, but then didn't work out.
But at least you were you were in the game, right? You were sort of
right. The most important thing is that I tested myself. I went out and I introduced myself, and I had conversations, and I met people. And I think one of the things about aging is you can't isolate. Because we have a tendency to isolate as we get older.
Yeah.
So that was like, yes, you have to go out and do that. And I'll go on blind dates. I'll still meet people and engage.
That's a big one, isn't it? Because I think that the tendency to get set in your ways and become more isolated is something that really you have to kind of, I don't know if I want to say fight, but don't fall into that. Maybe
it's a trap. It's a trap.
Huge trap. Isn't it?
I actually I'm very mindful every weekend of providing my activities. Now I dance tango every weekend, so I always have a Saturday night.
I see.
But I have to be mindful of socializing with people. Like last night, I had a little dinner party, and shopping, cooking, keeping up all those activities that you did throughout your whole life. You don't want to stop that.
So is that part of it? Like, in other words, you're keeping the sense of adventure, the sense of wonder. Is that the key?
And be curious. Be curious. Yeah. Meet people. I just came off from a cruise from Alaska where I was giving speeches and teaching yoga and meditation every day at what they call seminars at sea. And that was terrific because you meet so many people and you're out there, and there is a sense of adventure and a sense of wonderment. I have been to Argentina, Buenos Aires, 13 times to dance tango. And every time I go, I meet amazing people. And you put yourself out there on the dance floor, and it's scary and surprising and wonderful.
So what would you say to people who have already started, let's say, down the other road where they are not doing what you're doing? How could they start to change their life? What would be something simple or easy they could do?
I have a list, actually.
In the
That's
book?
a really good question. No, I have it in my speech. It's probably in the book, but in another
Just
format.
give us maybe one or two
Break a
things.
habit. Eliminate something superfluous from your life. Clean out stuff. Like the couple weeks ago, I had 6 bags of books I took to the library, and cried over each one I had to give away. I think that you have to be very mindful, and I think you have to set intentions. Like what are you going to do this weekend? And I asked myself that question. What's the Friday look like? What's the Saturday look like? What's the Sunday look like? How much time do you want to spend with people? How much time do you want to spend alone? I have 5 grandchildren. So I go away a lot. They're in 2 different cities. I have 2 adult sons. And so I have a very active family life also. So don't let your family go. It's very important.
Don't isolate yourself. Make an effort to see them.
Exactly. And I do activities with all of them. I go to their basketball games. I go to their soccer games. And I'm very much involved in my grandchildren's lives.
So start with something small. I like your change of habit. That can be a big project, actually, to change a small habit sometimes. Just
right.
Yeah,
actually, be mindful, be conscious. Don't lapse. Don't leave yourself inside.
Well, what about all the messages that we get from the media? Like, you watch television and all the commercials are for drugs that you may need or probably need or will need someday. And the negative messages that we get as we grow older, they kind of bombard us. How do you deal with that?
I don't believe in drugs, so I believe in yoga. I believe in a mind-body connection that has nothing to do with the drugs. But what's so funny is after they tell you about the drug, they give you a whole long list of reasons why you shouldn't.
Biggest side effect is death.
Yeah, exactly. So you're like looking at this going, really? I mean, I just think it's hilarious. And people who buy into it, you've got to find another way. Change your diet. Start cooking for yourself. Stop eating processed foods, that kind of thing.
So the course you've charted for yourself, though, is highly original. It's unique. You're trusting your body. You're trusting your mind-body connection, right?
Absolutely.
So again, what would you say to people who just, not that, we have to pull them towards that, but a lot of people are unhappy with the way things are going as they get older. So any other tips, that will kind of get them into a better space? Do
easy things. Take a walk. The 2 things which they say, there's a list of preventing aging. 2 things which they tell you to do. One, of course, is crossword puzzles, but I can't do crossword puzzles, so I have to invent something else. I write, so that's my exercise, my mental exercise. But walking, stretching. Put on some music. Music is really a fabulous thing to have in your apartment or your house.
Your spirits.
It makes you happy. Put on your favorite song. I put on Bonnie Raitt, and I'll just do some stretching, and it'll make me happy. So the other thing is check your negative thoughts every day. This is really, really important. We think more negative than positive. And also that negative thinking leads us to resistance. And resistance is the most toxic force on the planet.
Right.
So if we're finding ourselves resisting and we're mindful enough that we can spot it, pull it back, think of something positive, do something physical. It doesn't really, I always say the best things in life are free. Your ideas, imagination, your energy, optimism, opportunity, compassion, love.
We have to choose those, right?
Yeah.
We have to choose.
But we can choose everything. It's all free.
Right.
True. We don't have to pay for that. We don't have to pay for walking. We don't have to pay for stretching.
True.
Because we're worried about budgets and how much money we're going to have and if it's going to last, until we pass through to the next phase. But all this stuff is healthy and it makes you happy. Adrenaline, all the good neurotransmitters that go through us.
And you've got some great stories about your days as a bohemian, right?
I pretty much, I call myself a gypsy sometimes.
Yeah, a wandering Jewess.
Yeah, a wandering Jewess.
That's great.
Yeah.
And so do you have stories of, did you hang out with bohemians?
When I started as a kid in San Francisco in the Beatniks down in, at the times of the City Lights bookstores and Lawrence Ferlinghetti and
Haight-Ashbury.
All of that.
Yeah. So the book is full of stories.
I have stories, and I also have situations about adult children parenting me. My adult children love to parent me, and becoming a grandmother, which was very unusual. So their life stories, and people who read the book, they say, "Oh, Joan, I had the same thing happen to me, and I felt that same way."
Mm-hmm.
So it really translates into universal themes and universal issues.
Well, and you're just going to keep moving forward with the same energy, right? Because it's unlimited.
It's
isn't it?
unlimited. I get my next speech is at UCLA Day of Wellness because I teach at UCLA. I teach yoga and meditation there. So I'm going to do a keynote for them on their Day of Wellness, and we hope people come and take advantage of all the wonderful seminars.
I keep a file of older people, and I found a guy who was 106 driving around the country in an RV, and then I found a guy who was 107 doing the same thing.
Oh,
so
I think
great. We can continue for a while.
Right.
Thank you so much. How
Thank
do
you.
people contact you?
I have a website, and it's my name, Joan Francis Moran. Francis is with an E. www.joanfrancismoran. It gives you more information about me, and so if people want to contact me, please do.
That's the best way to do it. And the book's on Amazon, right?
The book's on Amazon. It's the red cover one, not the black cover one.
Oh, okay.
Speaking of self-publishing, this is a beautiful self-published book.
Turned out well, didn't it?
Turned out brilliantly, and
That's
if anybody
great.
wants to talk to me about it, I'll tell them.
Great. Okay, so thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you, Noel. Appreciate it.
And stay tuned because we have Karen Kondazian who's going to join us. And how did a woman manage to disguise herself as a man for 30 years in the Wild West? She wrote a book about that. And stay tuned and you'll find out. This woman was a stagecoach driver. Can you imagine? This is the Book Beat. I'm Jean-Noel Bassior.
Hey, this your girl, Paris, straight from the Cousins, and you can join us every Monday at 8 p.m. Here live, bring you some great entertainment for those ears, exclusively on latalklive.com. You can also catch us on iTunes Radio R&B or watch us on Ustream.tv. Reality radio handcrafted for your listening pleasure. This is LA Talk Live, and we are more than just talk.
Hello, this is Angela DeJoseph. Join me Thursday evenings at 6 p.m. Pacific for the Angela DeJoseph Show. Join me as we venture into health, wealth. We're going to give you news, interviews, and entertainment. You can also catch us on iTunes Radio, Live 365, Radio Flag, TiVo Radio, and now live on Facebook. Or watch and listen directly at latalklive.com. Reality radio handcrafted for your listening pleasure. This is LA Talk Live, and we are more than just talk.
My clothes ain't all fancy, and my car ain't brand new, but there is joy in my house.
Hello, I'm Joel Ramirez
And I'm Lolita Robinson Coppage, and welcome to Joy in My House,
on LATalkLive.com. Inspirational radio,
with a touch of recovery.
a reality show where nothing is left unsaid,
And no one is insignificant who says it.
exclusively on LATalkLive.com. You can also catch us on iTunes Radio R&B or watch us on Ustream TV.
Reality radio handcrafted for your listening pleasure. This is LA Talk Live, and we are more than just talk.
Hi, and welcome back to the Book Beat. We have Karen Kondazian. Did I pronounce right? Karen
Perfect.
Okay, in studio with us, and she is an award-winning theater actress. You have been in over 50 television shows. I saw your demo reel on the IMDb. Very impressive.
Thank you.
Good at those foreign accents. You've been on Frasier, Murder, She Wrote. You've got a really impressive resume. But now you've done something different with this first novel, right? Which is based on a true story.
Yes, it is.
How did you learn about Charlotte Parkhurst, and who was she?
I learned about this woman, Charlotte Parkhurst, Charlie,
Yeah.
when I was in college. I read a fascinating article about her in Cosmopolitan magazine.
Cosmo, yeah.
And it was about wild women of the Old West. And I thought to myself, how in God's name could a woman pass as a man for 30 years
Amazing story.
around macho stagecoach drivers because she was a famous stagecoach driver for Wells Fargo.
Huh.
How did she do that?
How did she do it?
And so,
Yeah.
well, you thought about it, and it would pass every decade or so. I think about it, and then I had my parents passed, and I had some feelings, and I thought, I want to dedicate something to them. So I just thought, well, all right, I'll see what happens. And 6 years and 27 drafts later, the book was done. And,
Wow.
And she's buried in Watsonville, California. She was an amazing person. And again, the interest, the curiosity of finding out my questions of how she passed and why she did what she did.
Why did she disguise herself as a man? How did this come about?
Okay, now, if you look at my book, you'll see that the book says it's inspired by a true story, a novel.
It's a novel.
But it's inspired by a true story.
Why did you decide to create a novel instead of write a book about her life?
Because we only know about 4 things about her.
Oh, there wasn't much.
There's not a lot of research on her, other than that she was apparently the first woman to vote in America as a man.
Well, that's really interesting. I was thinking that should shake things up a bit, right? I mean, has been any reaction to that?
Well, it's on her tombstone. I think that we can't prove that because maybe there were other women who were dressed as men who voted too.
That's a good point. Yeah.
But she voted for General Grant, and the interesting thing is she died of mouth cancer from too much chewing tobacco and cigars and liquor.
Wow.
And so did General Grant. He died of the same thing. So it's interesting that of the one person she voted for,
Yeah.
Ironic.
And she was about 67 when she died.
That's
right?
exactly right. And that was old for that age.
Right.
She was born in 1812 and died in 78.
Now you mentioned, and of course I do know it's a novel, so I'm not sure if this is, forgive me, I'm not sure if these are facts or not, but in the material that you sent, you said early on, though, she fell in love with a runaway slave and had his child. Is this true? Is this what happened? Or
I went to Watsonville and talked to a lot of people who their great-grandparents knew. She's, the great heroine of Watsonville. And her middle name is Darky. And that, of course, in that era, pre-Civil War, was a black person. And so there are rumors that she fell in love with a black man. There's no proof.
And did that lead somehow to her?
Well, then you asked the question about why she put on men's clothes.
Right.
What I did was, there's no answer to that question that we know of factually. So part of the novelization was I took all the rumors about her and I novelized them. And one of the rumors is just what we were talking about. And so she was in an orphanage many years of her life. She ran away from Boston. And I don't want to give the story away, but because of a terrible thing in her life, some of her family being killed, she put on men's clothes to go to California from Boston and to find the killer.
Right, and that's intriguing. I mean, that would make me want to read the book, so don't, I wouldn't worry about that. My producer's saying, hold up the book.
Yes, there it is. There's the cover. People ask, is that her? Well, there were no photographs of her.
Right.
But what I did was I took all the facts that I knew and found about her, of what she looked like, and then we put together an image that as close to her as possible.
So what are some things that we do know about her? When in your research, what did you uncover that we do know for sure?
Well, she was a really famous stagecoach driver, a whip. That's what a whip is. For Wells Fargo. And the thing is, she was with all these macho guys.
Yeah.
And, one of the things
You asked a great question, which was, Well, when you're with a lot of guys. And,
How do you pee?
yeah, how did she?
Because they all peed together.
Right.
How did she have her period?
Yeah.
How did all these things that women have to put up with?
Especially in those conditions, in that age. Yeah.
Yes. I mean, you couldn't, and how did she cover her body? She didn't have whiskers, obviously. So my imagination, I figured she must have, part of her clothes in the morning getting dressed was she went out in the garden and put dirt all over her face. What else? How else could she pass? 30, this is what's interesting. When she died, she had carried this off for 30 years, and they were getting her ready for the funeral, and they went, oh my God.
Is that when they discovered?
That's it. The famous Charlie Parkhurst is a woman who's had a child.
Huh.
And so people came from all over, San Francisco and everywhere, to check her body. They couldn't believe it. And the New York Times, there's an obituary in the back of the book, her New York Times obituary, and they were asking for relatives to come claim her body.
Nobody showed up?
Nobody showed up. Nobody knew.
And this was in 1879 that she died,
yes,
right?
Yes.
And so is that sort of, when you were researching it, was that these obituaries, was that a major source of, for your research?
Yes, but the obituary kind of appeared as, I didn't even realize there would be one. And it kind of appeared magically. I have to tell you, there was a lot of serendipity around this book.
I'll bet, yeah.
I mean, you were talking about agents. I mean, a literary agent, books, book publishers in the last very interesting interviews. And, for instance, I had finished the book and I thought, oh God, now I have to send out proposals and all of that. And one day I got an email from a friend in Transylvania that I hadn't heard from in 30 years. And he said, I was good friends with Tennessee Williams, and he had taken some photographs of me on Tennessee Williams.
I saw that photo on the web. That was amazing.
Oh, yeah. Kissing me.
Yeah.
And so he said, would you, there's this book, and they want to use this as a cover. And would you call this publisher? So I did. The publisher asked about me. I told him, oh, this book is interesting. Send me a couple of chapters. I did. And then all of a sudden he said, send me the book. And the next thing I knew, he was offering to buy it.
Amazing.
So the book has been blessed in a lot of ways.
Right. Do you feel you had any help from
Charlie? Let me tell you, once in a while when I was writing, I felt like I was channeling because things came to me that very odd.
That you wouldn't have known, but they felt right.
Yes. And I used to go visit her grave all the time and say, listen, please forgive me. I hope, but I hope what I'm writing, I have some bookmarkers with information on it. And the book hadn't been published yet. And so I left bookmarkers for her.
Did you ask her, does this feel right? Does that feel right?
Anyway, it's funny. It's fun. It's very fascinating to write about someone who there is some information, but, the rest of it that you have to conjure.
Right. So were there any other facts that you did find out that we know are true about her? Because I'm asking because she is such a the whole story is just so fascinating, and because your book is based on truth. Anything else that?
Well, again, the orphanage is true, the stagecoach driving, the voting, and she had a child.
And did anybody ever track that child, or did that child ever show up?
I think the child must have died because, again, they did do research trying to find family and relatives, and I think the child must have died.
So when she died, and this huge discovery was made, I would imagine there was a flurry of trying to find out more, right? Is that what happened?
Yes, and nobody could find out anything. She had hidden it so well. Of course, her being born in the East and her coming to California, probably...
People left their past behind.
That's it. One of the wonderful things about being in the West was you could reinvent yourself.
You could.
By the way, may I say, I don't know how many of you out there know this, that during the Civil War, there were almost 500 women who disguised themselves as men and fought in the Civil War.
That many? I didn't know that.
Yes.
I'd heard of one or two, but I had no idea.
There were a lot. And they found, of course, some dead bodies, and then some of them just went home and had children and got married, and, but a lot of women, women couldn't have dreams then.
That's
Only
true.
men could have dreams. You could be 2 or 3 things as a woman in the, pre-modern day. So the women who were rebels or free spirits like I am, like maybe you are,
Could be.
chose to choose their own life, their own way of living. And I think it must have been very lonely, though, for Charlie, because, imagine what it would be like out there to not have any friends, to be able to tell your heart to someone.
Right. And you say, though, that she did have a love affair. A housekeeper fell in love with her, or did you invent that?
She did have a housekeeper, but I did invent that. And she had a child, so obviously she must have been in love with someone. She has 2 love affairs in it. And one of them is with a man, and one of them, a woman loves her. She was amazing. She was very brave. And, my book, The River That Runs Through the book is about forgiveness. And I really talk about that in the book. And my question to all of you is, if someone destroyed your family horribly, could you forgive them? And if you couldn't, how far might you go in terms of revenge?
Why did this question interest you, fascinate you?
Personally, forgiveness has always been an issue in my life, and I think probably for everyone. Some in a smaller degree, others in a larger degree. Forgiveness is very hard. It's what the Bible is all about.
It's one of the hardest things.
It's one of the hardest things. And so she has to take this journey of forgiveness.
So in writing a novel, you get the chance to explore these things, these themes that are important in your life, right?
That's right. Forgiveness and things like, I believe that in life, all the terrible things eventually turn out to be a gift. And sometimes I believe we create the problem in a strange way because we need the gift.
To find the solution.
But we get this gift out of, you hear about people who have had terrible sicknesses. I have a friend who has ALS. In fact, the man who published the audiobook. And right now he's doing this beautiful thing where he's doing videos, diaries, and talking about it to help others. So he's taking the bad thing in his life and he's helping other people with it and turning it into a beautiful thing. And
so life throws you these challenges, and then you get the gift of the creativity
of making something beautiful out of it, hopefully. And I'm may not be religious, but I'm very spiritual. And I believe, so the book has the theme of always, searching to make your life a gift to others.
And is that what you felt she did?
Yes.
Charlie did?
Oh, I think she's been an inspiration for me.
How so?
First of all, she was such a survivor. And I must tell you something. This is slightly going to answer your question. I get letters all the time I got one in particular from a woman in the Midwest who said that her husband had died, her son had tried to commit suicide, she'd lost the house, she didn't have very much insurance, so she hung out at the library and she found the book and she read it. And she said, thank you, because if Charlie could survive what she went through, she said, I can too. So, as an artist, I believe that if you put the objective in your art is to assist other people, to inspire them, to help them to transform, then it becomes a gift for others.
So you got to do this.
I got to do it through Charlie.
Through Charlie. Sounds like it was a co-creation.
She gave me the gift.
Yeah, that's so. What advice would you have to writers to and especially to fiction writers?
Well, I tell you, everybody is frightened to write that first paragraph or the first line even. And my suggestion is to take a tape recorder or whatever and to sit down with a friend you trust and to put on Dragon software, which transcribes what you say, and to share with them an idea that you have. Or maybe it's about your family. Maybe you want to talk about your heritage or your life so that your children and your grandchildren can know who you were. And that way you don't have to worry, because what happens is the transcription will ultimately be 30 pages on the computer, and you can just put it together and begin.
So just start somewhere.
Yes, start somewhere.
Start in the middle.
And it doesn't have to be at the beginning.
No, the end, the middle, or wherever.
Start at the end and work backwards if you want.
I always say go to the most exciting part that you want to write.
That's it.
You know, because I learned as a journalist that you write the lead last often, because sometimes you don't know what the story is. And people struggle. I used to struggle over the lead, and no. So it all kind of comes together, doesn't it?
That's beautiful, like our lives.
Yes, exactly. Thank you so much for joining us. And how can people get in touch with you?
Amazon, my name is Kondazian.com is my...
Spell it.
KONDAZIAN.com, or Amazon on Barnes & Noble.
Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
This has been The Book Beat. Join us next week. I want to thank my producer, Susan Levin, who comes up with amazing guests like the ones that you've seen tonight. I don't know how she does it, but she is the wind beneath my wings. And my brother, Rick Fleischman, who wrote the bumper music. So stay tuned to LA Talk Live, and next week, please join us, same time, same station, at LA Talk Live for The Book Beat, where we're more than just talk.
To LA Talk Live, reality radio handcrafted for your listening pleasure. This is LA Talk Live, and we're more than just talk. Stay tuned.